We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
with global pals. It's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater podcast, the podcast where we talk about
Everything Theater. Hi, everybody. I'm Benita Zahn.
And I'm Ellen Cribbs, and I'm thrilled to tell you all that we are sponsored this week from Harbinger Theater. This is, Benita, can you believe it, their 10th consecutive Capital Region premiere. And it's a world premiere by Brian Sheldon. He's been on our show before. He runs Sand Lake Center for the Arts. And he has written a play about his childhood, basically, growing up in Schenectady. In the dining room of a small Schenectady apartment shared with his son Anthony, Danny struggles to sweep up the remnants of his failed salon business. Anthony, a full-time cosmetology student, plods along in his dad's footsteps while working a full-time factory job. The tumultuous and imbalanced relationship between father and son is exposed as the debts pile up and tensions run high. Brian Sheldon said, Custom Cuts is about learning who you are and having the courage to trust yourself. It's running from September 21st through the 30th at the Albany Barn. There's a free preview on September 20th with Talkback Fridays on September 22nd and 29th. Check it out at Harbinger Theater's Eventbrite page.
So exciting. And, Harbinger just does, they're so on the point, out there, which is just great. But so are our guests in terms of doing new work, things that you wouldn't normally, we don't get to see in the Capital Region. We've got Will Severin and Mary Jane Hansen with us, artistic director and the chairman. And anyway, they're iTheatre Saratoga, and they do readings and shows. And welcome. We're so excited to have you with us.
Thank you, Benita. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And it was great, Mary Jane, when Ellen was talking about the show that Harbinger Theater is doing. Your eyes lit up.
Yes, because I love Brian Sheldon. I've worked with him for such a long time. He is such a success story in every way. He's just a great human being, and I'm so thrilled that he is at the forefront of the theater community, in our region.
I have to talk about you two because there's music in the background, writing music, directing, writing shows. Is there anything that you two don't do?
Well, sometimes I feel like Will does. No, he does everything. No, but we try to pull our weight. We try to. I mean, as you know, you've got to be multi-talented, multifaceted. You've got to wear many hats to make a go of it in the theater. If you could direct, if you could stage manage, if you could build a set, if you could, do costumes, anything to get it up and running.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a lot of it is just out of necessity. You guys know how it is. You're always basically trying to scrape two pennies together to make theater.
And then you got to publicize,
exactly.
Also, as you know, and you have to, design posters and do whatever. We all know what goes into it.
Should point out that, as Saratoga, a lot of folks may know the Creative Place International, which was the forerunner to Saratoga, and 13 years now?
Yep, this is our 13th year. Basically, we decided to rebrand as iTheatre Saratoga because we felt the Creative Place, it didn't really say really what we did. It sounded like maybe we made pottery. So, we thought maybe it was time for a little bit of a change there. So,
and we wanted to tell people where we were coming from, geographically speaking, but also, on the innovation front. We want to try new things because a theater, like humanity, because it is that representation of humanity, constantly growing, constantly evolving, and you have to be at the forefront of that. You have to be ahead.
A lot of folks may know that you presented Kunstler about the celebrated director. It had a run in Saratoga. I think you took it to New York for a bit, then you were back in Saratoga at UPH.
Right.
And it really got a lot of press. but that's not just what you are. So I want to sort of split up the question to one, a big show like that versus some of the smaller things you're doing, readings, bringing out some new work and trying it out. What's your sweet spot now for iSaratoga?
We always want to do things that have not been done before, in, you know, whatever way that means. So whether it means taking something that people may have heard of and doing it in a different way, or to take a concept and turn it on its head, to talk about something that people are talking about, but talk about it in a different way, or just to do new theater.
Yeah, I mean,
To take an old piece and do a new adaptation, to do a completely new, a new production.
yep, and a lot of the play readings that we've been doing, you know, we've been trying to give new playwrights an opportunity to have their work heard. So all of the play readings that we've been doing are definitely, I would say, at least area premieres. In some instances, they're plays that have never been read before
In their entirety.
in their entirety. So, you know, last week we presented a play by Jenny Lynn Bader called The Invitation to Damon, which really kind of gets into, it turns the whole political correctness thing on its side. You know, it really does kind of.
I was so proud to have done that, because, you know, we more and more as a society, we're feeling like we have to decide which side we're on and stick and not really think for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we forget that we need to be in a conversation if we ever want to do anything, you know.
But it was a great satire on the culture wars that are going on, you know. So that was a play we presented as a reading last week. And this week we have another one coming up, that 474 Days by Alyssa Madlovsky, I believe. And that deals with, you know, essentially it's based on testimonials of all these folks that worked in a grocery store in New York City during the spate of the pandemic. And essential workers. So that's basically like their stories. So, you know, compelling in the regard of like what they went through in their own words.
And then, of course, we have to be fostering the next generation of theater and young people. So we have 2 plays that were written by and for young people and featuring
performs like in the readings by young people. So, you know, I mean, we've had a youth program that we've kind of conducted for a number of years. This year we're presenting some of our students from the past and some other folks that have gotten a new opportunity to basically read some of these new young people's works.
And this year you're doing Screams Internally.
Yep.
Is one of them, which doesn't that sound how our childhood was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
but we're
natives
going to make sense of our world, right? And young people especially sometimes are at a loss for that, you know, how to make sense of this crazy world. So that's a, you know, a piece basically that's about a girl who's trying to, you know, listen to these voices in her head that are full of anxiety, because, you know, young people have anxiety, and rightfully so.
What's the length of run for you folks?
If we're doing like a standard production, usually we'll run 2 weeks. So it'll be like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the following week, another Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know, we are a professional theater, so we are an equity company. But essentially, because of that, it's really tight with our schedules because you only have so much in your budget. So, you know, we'll essentially rehearse for 2 weeks, open at the end of the second week, and then run it again for the, you know, the third week there. So that's usually
so staged reading. You've got script.
Oh yeah. So the stage reading is we rehearse it one day, perform it the next.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ellen.
I was going to ask, do those stage readings then move on to full productions, or do you tend to have like 2 separate things going on?
Sometimes they do. I think it depends on the reception that we get from the audience, what we consider our core company members, how they react to it. So, for instance, I'd really love to see Invitation to Damon get another shot, but that's something that we'll have to talk about.
Yeah. But it's both. So sometimes I think it's just let's hear something new, and then organically whether
give a playwright an opportunity to hear their work read,
right,
yeah,
and whether that organically turns into a production down the road. But you know, we're always, I mean, our whole mission has always been new works whether those works originate with us or whether they come from the outside, or it's something that's old that you're making new again that isn't done very often. So we've really tried to stay off but at the same time, things that will appeal to people.
Yeah. For instance, Agatha Christie. I mean, there are hardcore fans. We once had a woman punch through glass because she couldn't find the door to get in. So yeah, I mean, hardcore fans, yeah, of Agatha Christie. But we take that as well, and we're now putting never before adaptations into play. We found an adaptation that Agatha Christie herself wrote that was never professionally produced. So we did that a few years ago.
And Mary's adapted. This will be her 4th Agatha Christie that she's adapted. The first one she adapted was sanctioned by the Christie estate. And then since then, a lot of her work is falling into the public domain. So we're trying to stay on top of that. But, those are one of those things that, you bring kind of your traditional older audience into the theater for something like an Agatha Christie, as opposed to something that's a new play like Kunstler, or some of the readings that we're doing where you're getting, I think, more of a younger crowd. Or so you're always trying to figure out where you're going to program things for the different audiences to come and see what you're doing.
And if I could just mention one thing about the public domain, one of the real benefits of that is that you can be a little bit more imaginative. You can be faithful to the story, but say your casting can be colorblind or, inventive with gender. So you can stretch the boundaries a little bit and not have to worry about repercussion or
actually
asking permission. You know what I mean?
Our last Christie was 3-1X. It was called Poirot's Investigate. And we had 3 different Poirots. We had Poirot as what you would expect, the usual Caucasian man. We had a Hispanic actor that was Poirot. And then we turned it on its head and we had a woman play Poirot. So, it's just how do we mix these things up, as things kind of should be based on what our, society is today, as opposed to, this is what this needs to be. We always like to kind of think a little outside the box.
That's something that, like, during COVID, we collaborated with the, is it the Black Theater Troupe of
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York?
With Remy.
Yeah,
with Remy. And what Remy said, it kind of like light bulb in my head. You can think about color blind casting in a way that it's like, well, if it's a role where it doesn't really matter, but sometimes you can just be full on colorblind in, say, in Agatha Christie, because it's fiction. And, if it bothers someone in a way, well, that gets them to think about maybe why it bothers them in that way. And so, you can have that conversation with, why can't there be a wealthy Black man in Britain at the turn of the century? If it's not historically correct, then why? So it's that in the back of your head. But we don't have to be a slave to history when you're talking about fiction. We can just create this alternate reality where anything is possible.
Something Ellen and I have talked about often between us and with the guests that we've had on, in terms of fostering and cultivating an audience, retaining your older patrons and bringing in younger patrons. And it's a delicate balance. And then add in the pandemic and an appetite for happy stuff immediately afterwards, and that may still there be a thread of that. How has that affected you folks and your programming going forward? Because you had taken a break for a while, you had your family building going on as well. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question? Because sometimes, as you said, the family building, it just completely like wipes me out mentally.
But I think, like everybody else during COVID, everybody was kind of shut down. Our solution to that, to at least like continue creating art. And then, Mary had the great idea of like, why don't we had a number of radio dramas that we basically put together, and we produced them all in-house here. And they were all mostly original works that Mary had written. We did a Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is it's not really an adaptation. It's more kind of like
A reimagining
and behind the scenes of
or the origin story of
how did that story come to be written. Really interesting piece. We'll have to send you guys a copy of it so you can check it out. It's online. But Washington Irving is in a character in the story as well as
Aaron Burr.
Yeah, so there's a relationship.
I'm on team Aaron Burr, if anybody asks. Yeah.
but essentially we reached out to a number of different like theater companies in our area, Sand Lake Center for the Arts. We had Brian come in and voice a character, and Jean Rimet came in from the Black Theater Troupe. Who else came in? We actually
Lake George Dinner Theater people.
Yes, we did. Tony Pallone came in from Theater Voices.
Mhm.
So I mean, there were other organizations, but it was basically our whole thing was like, hey, we'll publicize this, we'll get this out there, and WAMC and do the whole thing. WAMC ran it, so it reached a lot of people, and they basically, all these organizations were mentioned. So it was our whole thing was like, hey, how can we keep other organizations in the public eye while there's no theater being
live
performed?
theater.
Yeah. So, like you guys, it's like we're all in this thing together, and to really kind of support one another, I think it's important,
Now, kind of piggybacking onto Benita's question with audience and so forth, bringing in new work. We've talked to a lot of people about the importance of not just rehashing, not just doing the same old productions, and how empowering that is and how important that is. I'm curious, since you talked about having adaptations done, do you notice a difference? Because I think a lot of theaters feel pressure of, we need that recognizable name. So when you do your twists on Agatha Christie, do you see more of a turnout than, say, a young playwright that nobody knows anything about the show?
Yes.
Definitely.
That's a difference.
I mean, I think
people come out for Agatha Christie's. Yeah. I would love people to come out more for, to see what else is out there and who's writing and what these different voices are. But I mean, I read somewhere, and don't quote me because I'm going to paraphrase this, but she's like the third most selling author or most selling books after like the Bible and Shakespeare, so it's, it's like that much in the consciousness of theater goers and readers in general,
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, sure, there's that recognition factor where you're going to get kind of more your traditional theater goer that's going to come out and see something. But new works are important too. And we try to balance those things because, okay, we may not get as big of an audience for something that's a new work or a new title or an author that people aren't familiar with, as opposed to, obviously that's why some of these things are done over and over again. So for us, if you're doing an Agatha Christie, well, that has its own built-in audience. And you're trying to appeal to everybody. So you want to make sure that you have something in your season for everyone.
And at the same time, you want to get the people the theater goers, you want to bring them in to your organization as well. The people who are out there to see live theater. Don't want to forget about them.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when you were performing in Saratoga, and not the little theater. Some folks might think that, but there is a theater in the
it was in the dance museum. Is that
in the dance museum?
Yes.
You're not utilizing that space anymore.
No, I'm not sure what's happening with it changed leadership a couple of times, and I'm not sure that they're using it at all anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the story is.
So what's home for you now?
So we're nomads. We move all over the place, and it depends on what we're doing. A reading may per se be a different space than a full-on production.
We're the art center at Saratoga was fortunate enough, and they put the work in, so it's not just luck or anything like that, but they've got significant grants to open their space up for rehearsals and for a nominal fee, very an affordable fee, you can perform there. But we're also at the Saratoga Music Hall at City Hall. So that's on.
They've renovated their space, and it's more of a kind of traditional, theater space. So we'll be presenting our Agatha Christie Murder of Roger Ackroyd. We open that October 27th, and then that runs through November 5th.
It's a huge cast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
Pray
massive
for us.
cast. And then we do a speakeasy every year. We started the tradition last year, so we're gonna start that again this year. And it's a holiday concert that's the antithesis to the typical holiday concert. So we usually pick a theme. So this year it's Cosmic Christmas. So there'll be a lot of kind of, spaced out kind of cover
A lot of Bowie.
songs. Exactly. And then
You don't have to do all Christmas songs if doing a theme,
Yeah.
right? So
and there's usually a pastiche that pastes it all together, and we have a cash bar, and that's a good time. That's going to be right before Christmas, December 22nd and 23rd, and we're in.
really awesome musicians, including one Will
Oh, you're
Severin.
sweet. You're
No,
sweet.
I'm not sweet. I'm facts.
But and then we'll have a number of gifts, last minute gifts available as well from like a number of local artisans that we'll
Yeah.
have as well.
So you can pack them right up. We'll have Christmas bags and tissue paper. Just buy your gifts and don't worry.
Yeah, it's a good time.
I mean, you should point out, that you are a composer and a sound designer, and so you grew up in the theater, but the oral part was integral
Oh,
to
big time.
your, yeah.
Big time. So, basically most of the shows that we do, I definitely sound design, and usually it's like, original music is, supplied for all the shows as well.
Thank you for that, Benita, because when I was listening before, in the back of my mind was like, I didn't mention the things he does best. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
A fun story. A friend of mine is working at a community theater that shall remain nameless and needs some music. It's part of the script, and they don't have a big budget. And the person who runs the company said, just use a tape recorder. And my friend who's director went, oh, we have to have a conversation. Sound is not just use a tape recorder, that I don't think that many people outside, well, this was a person in theater, understand how the sound is another character.
Oh, totally.
Within a show, and needs to be developed and nurtured and cared for and showcased.
Yeah.
And so
But the most important supporting character. It's only supporting because you can't see it, but it's there, and it is guiding. It is, all of your feeling and emotion is supported by the sound that you hear and the music that you hear.
Totally.
I mean, think of movies. Like if you just could imagine any Star Wars without the theme, without the music, or, and anything, I just go through all the John Williams movies, but
no, but I mean,
it's so important.
You're right. It is another character. And I've always thought of it that way. And basically when music should be present and when absence of music is exactly what you want, so there's that whole thing too of like, how do you spot a show? How do you figure out where that makes sense? That's always been a thing for me, like creating that roadmap, and some of it's instinct. Some of it's pretty obvious when you read what you read. But yeah, I've always felt like you don't want it to get in the way. But you do want it to point up the things that you want to point up. Or sometimes you'll read a script and it's like, there's not quite enough here to give the vibe that you're looking for. And the music or the sound is going to basically what's going to push it that way a little bit more for the audience. So yeah, no, I love that. I mean, that's my stock in trade. But I am definitely a jack of all trades and master of none, master of some, maybe.
He never does anything halfway. So
is there a script you're working on now, Mary?
I just finished The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, kind of in the nick of time to really get this, to a place where we can produce it in October. So that was the big lift for me. Further than that, I want to retool a couple of pieces that I've I tend to write for large casts because I write, for, so that people can have opportunity. But
that's it. Well, and that's another.
But it makes things a little difficult to produce because if you're our company, we want to pay people, we want to value the arts and pay them, but you have to maintain the budget for that, and that's challenging. That's challenging.
That is a challenge, but but that is something that's worth mentioning. I mean, the money that basically we have in our budgets, majority of that goes right out the door to the artists that we employ. We feel as artists ourselves that it's important that they're paid. It may be token, it may be just enough, hey, to get you gas, so that you can get back and forth, but everybody should get something. We wouldn't ask somebody to do something for nothing unless they just felt compelled and that was their donation to the organization, and that
They have to
happens too.
overtly say that.
Yeah.
And we are a professional company, we're an equity company, but we can only afford, just so many contracts.
For sure.
And that's just standard, I think, for
Most organizations. Yeah.
So you need to write Greater Tuna again, something like that. Two
Something
people playing myriad characters.
yeah, that's why I'm rethinking some of the things. Like, is there a way to maybe not make it 14 people?
No, it's true. It's totally true.
Once we cross the 10-minute left mark, Ellen's got some very specific questions for you two.
All right.
Okay.
Shoot, Ellen.
This is the close-up segment. So these are some kind of rapid fire questions for both of you. So Will and Mary, are you ready for your close-up?
All right. I think so.
So what moment for you, we'll start with Will and then we'll go to Mary. What moment for you was the moment you just knew, I have to do theater in my life?
That is interesting. I grew up in the theater. My mom was a producer and a director, so I grew up as a child in the theater. So I was exposed to it my entire life. So that was just always there. It wasn't like all of a sudden it was like somebody flipped the switch. I mean, it was just organic. I became a musician, and basically, then became obviously a composer, got into sound, and it just kind of organically fell back into theater. Because I do a lot of work for television and I've done some films. But theater, I always thought of theater as a cinematic thing, insofar as how you would support that musically, like we were talking earlier. But then it became my sidebar life. I became an assistant director. I became a producer, like for doing things for television, doing things for film. So I'm kind of doing the same thing in theater. I don't really kind of view them as different disciplines. It's all kind of the same kind of creative juices that you get going, and you're kind of crafting things in a similar way. It's just that it's live as opposed to something that's on film. So yeah, for me, like I said, there wasn't really a big switch. It was just always there. And then kind of I went back to it and it was like, oh, this just makes sense. So it's kind of maybe one of those knock you on the back of the head things later on.
What did your parents think when you said, this is what I'm going to go do?
Oh, my parents are awesome. They're totally supportive of it. They're very arts, they were both in the arts, and they couldn't have been more supportive. My parents were never the type that were like, you need to go to school, be a doctor or a lawyer. Those discussions never happened in our household. You know what I mean? So, my brothers are also artistically inclined, one of them especially. So, the arts were always celebrated in our house.
And Mary, how about you? What was the moment for you? You just knew.
Different in my house. It was different. I came from a split household and there was no support from one side. And on the other side, my mother, I love her so much. She is very supportive of my dreams, but never in a practical way. Like it's a long story to get into Lorraine Hanson's mindset. But I graduated, long story. I'm going to try to self-edit as I go here, but I graduated from high school and that was hard because I was so adrift. And then I was like, I don't know what I want to do. But no, actually I do, because the only thing I ever wanted to do was to be an actor. So I found a play, it was Edward Albee, A Delicate Balance. And I learned a monologue from it. So I was basically doing a monologue for getting into college of like a 50-year-old woman. And it just so happened that one of the professors that was recruiting was like a former partner of Edward Albee and was very fond of that choice. And so I ended up getting accepted into Marymount Manhattan College on pretty much a full scholarship. Just completely adrift in the world. So I spent 2 years there, and then I transferred to another college and finished up my theater degree. And then I got involved professionally through an internship with the New York State Theater Institute. And I think the rest is from there, I met my husband, and I'm just been doing
Yeah,
it
we've been
forever.
collaborating ever
Yeah.
since.
Wow.
Oh, that's what you call it.
Yeah. But I think like, okay, I do think that the universe is at play here. God, if you want to say that, but you know, it's speaking to you constantly. And if you follow the path, if you listen, you'll find your way. I don't know if I've found it. I think I'm listening, you know, but I'm still doing what I love. So I'm grateful every
Is
day.
there a show out there for either of you that had just a really big impact on your life, whether something you worked on or saw?
No, again, just like the first show I saw on Broadway was like Phantom of the Opera, and you know, it was just my mother found a ticket from a scalper and sent me in by myself. Like I was, you know, I was in high school, maybe, I don't know, but so that had an impact because it was so grand and beautiful, and then I was like a big Madonna fan, so I saw Speed the Plow on Broadway. So those, but you know, those were, I think, important works for me, just because. Again, it was opening up my world in that way. And I just think theater does that when it's good. It continues to open up your world. You know, as a teaching tool, you will never stop learning because there's always something, you know, in every discipline here in the theater. Thinking of that Mary Louise Parker, she was in that play about the math.
Proof?
Proof?
I think it was Proof.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's everything, you know, in every discipline, you can continue to learn in the theater.
I think that's a great place for us to take a quick pause. Just before we say thank you to you, Ellen, one more pass on Harbinger upcoming.
Absolutely. Make sure you go check out Custom Cuts, written by the wonderful Brian Sheldon, running from September 21st through the 30th, with a free preview on the 20th and talkbacks on September 22nd, 29th. You can get tickets at Eventbrite through Harbinger Theater. It's great. Go support new, exciting theater.
Definitely.
Which also means going to iTheatre Saratoga. So much new work that you folks have coming up for adults, for kids. And you know what? Theater really doesn't matter about the age. It's about the experience. And do you charge, or yours is free?
Our readings are free. So the readings that, you know, we've done now, this will be the second weekend. We're doing 3 plays this weekend, but they're all free to the public.
And we try to keep our costs down as much as possible
Yeah.
for the theater we do charge for.
Yeah. I mean, the standard $25 ticket, you know what I mean? But you know what goes into it, so you know how cheap that is.
Yes.
And
Right. iTheatre Saratoga. Take a look, find them, get there, go, enjoy, hoot and holler, applaud loudly, and let them know that you had a great opportunity to meet Will and Mary right here on Everything Theater. You two are wonderful. I feel like this we just barely scratched the surface.
I can't wait to speak to you more.
yeah, we'll touch base. But Benita, thank you, and Ellen, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ellen.
Absolutely lovely meeting you both. And for our listeners, thanks for listening. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything, everything.